So after waiting what seems like an eternity to get this part, I finally got it in. I'm going to check it with an ohm meter to make sure that it's good and to verify that the old one is bad. I'm on R times 10 scale on this. This coil should read around 200 ohms. This is the old one. I cut the wire off the connector here. This is the old one, completely open. As you can see, no reading on the meter. It's open, completely open. That's the old coil. This is the new one. And got a wire at the end of the connector here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to hold it. There it is, 200 ohms, exactly what it should read. So this is a good pickup coil then. Alright, so we're going to put it back together again. Well, looks like we got spark here. Let me see if I can. I wanted to do this at night, but in the interest of getting done, let's just give it a whirl here. I don't know if that shows up. I don't know if that showed up on the camera or not, but we'll see. But it's fixed. There is one precaution here, by the way. There's two connectors back there that you can actually get them reversed if you're not careful. And sure enough, I got them reversed. It didn't cause any damage, but it cost me about 10 minutes of fiddling around here, wondering why I didn't have spark anymore. Okay, let me end this right now. So I warned you about the two connectors. These are the two connectors right here. One of them goes to the pickup coil, and the other one goes to the generator coil, the stator winding. If you're in low light like I was before, and you connect these things up, they will mate up backwards. So the best thing to do is check them by the wire color. The wire color seems to be the same on both ends. This one has got a green with a yellow stripe and a red, and so does the other end. And that's the stator winding. That's what powers this ignition module. And this is just simply the pickup coil. Just a warning. And I hooked the oil switch back up, and I'm probably going to disconnect that again next time around. I can see that could be a nuisance. I know it protects the machine for low oil, but in the future it's probably going to be a nuisance anyway. I know the guy that owns this, I'm fixing it for him, but he doesn't want to connect it either because he always checks the oil. He's good at things like that, so it's not going to be a problem. Okay, time to reassemble this. The spark lead gets clipped here, plastic, see it? And the pickup coil wire goes over the top. This is where it came out of. And then there's another retainer here up on the top. And I should mention, by the way, I used a feeler gauge. I didn't mention it before. I used a feeler gauge to set the gap on this, and it was 0.016 inch. I couldn't find that. It didn't mention it anywhere, but that seemed to work, so that's what it is. I see guys setting it up with credit cards and that kind of thing, but I think that's a little too thick. So anyway, the gap between the reluctor, remember I mentioned this before, this is the reluctor, You set it between the reluctor and the pickup coil. Put a feeler gauge down in there and move the coil back and forth until you know, you get the right gap. Here's the feeler gauge that I used, and it's easy enough, but I didn't mention it before. Now let me see what I have to do here now. I can't do this on a tripod, so the camera's gonna be moving around a lot. I guess we'll put the cover back on first, and then after that we'll have to put the regulator back on the bracket. There was a bracket that goes on. So step by step, I'm going to shut this down for a moment here. This thing gets bolted on, by the way, here with some flange bolts here into the engine, and there's a couple of screws on the bottom, Phillips head screws, but pretty self explanatory. Just looking it over to see if there's anything else I need to do before I start on that. No, that's how it's going to go, and I think I mentioned once before in the other video that getting that bracket back on, which is the battery bracket and holds this regulator, getting that back on is going to be a bitch, because there's a bolt here, or a flange screw down on the bottom. I got my finger on it right here. There's a motor mount right here, and the motor mount makes it almost impossible to get a socket or even a wrench on that. So I might have to notch out this motor mount a little bit with the Dremel tool so that I can get a socket on it. But that's after I get this back on. I'm going to shut it down for now. Okay, so I got the shroud back on. One thing you got to do is finagle it. Make sure it gets behind the carburetor. We never had to take this carburetor off, by the way, but you do have to loosen it, pull it forward, and where the hell is it? I'm looking for something here. The plate. This plate had to come off because of this pin. If you remember, this is what controls the choke. So this also goes on the front of the carburetor. And it all slides on these bolts, studs, these two studs. What I did want to mention is the size of these screws, because you'll get them all mixed up, I'm sure. These were 16 millimeter, and I measured them from the, doing this one-handed, from the bottom of the flange to the end of the thread. So the threaded portion is 16 millimeter. That's how I'm measuring them. So this is not 16, this is shorter. These are a little longer. You have 4 of them. You go on a plastic shroud, 16 millimeter bolts. Screws, there's 12 of them here. Frankly, the only 2 I remember taking out are the 2 on the bottom of the cover, and that's all I'm going to concentrate on now. Where the rest of those screws go, I have no idea. Luckily, they're all the same size. Well, you know, yeah, they're all the same size. Okay. So anyway, if you recall, when I took this thing apart, there's a screw hole right down there on the bottom of the cover, and there's one on the other side too. And this is where it is. If I get the long shot, it's way the hell down under the cover. So I may have to use my super glue trick. Sometimes I'll super glue a screw to the screwdriver to get it started in an area like that, and then super glue anything gooey and gummy and sticky, you know, to hold the screw. Usually magnetic screwdrivers, mine anyway, they won't hold the screw. I'll try the magnetic first. We'll see what happens. Shockingly, those screws went in. I get my flashlight here. Made a liar out of me. The magnetic screwdriver worked, so I ran a super magnet on the tip for a few minutes. I just left it there. That gave it a little renewed life. So this is what I'm going to deal with now. This mount right here, where it blocks the head of that screw. I'm going to try to grind it back a little bit. No other way I can. What is this junk? Oh, maybe, no. Nope, blocked off every which way. Blocked off. This is a rubber floor they have under the battery. And the battery goes in there. Alright, so anyway, let me see what I can do with that. Well, it didn't take much with the sanding wheel and a cutoff wheel and a sanding drum, and got enough room to get a socket on that bolt down there, on that flange screw, whatever you want to call it. Now the other bitch is getting the regulator on. You can see where the bolt is there. This, by the way, is the battery charger. So I think I can get my hand in there and screw it in, and then or, you know, an open-end wrench to tighten it down. Hopefully that's all I need. Okay, so I had to come in from this end here, where the ignition is, and I realized that if you have the rail in, which you know I have out right now, this rail here, this could be a real son of a bitch to get out of there, but since I don't have the rail, I'm able to, you know, reach my hand in here like this and get the screw started like this, and then I'll tighten it with a wrench. There's two little tangs on this bracket, by the way, that the heat sink goes between. And you can see, maybe you can see, I have it out right now. This is the way it goes. It goes between the two. So when you're tightening that little screw, you got to be careful. You know, make sure you got it between the two tangs there, otherwise it isn't going to sit flat. The other thing is this screw, along with the two on this bracket, are not your normal flange bolts they use throughout. They're a finer machine thread, and they're 12 millimeter in length from the flange to the end of the thread. 12 millimeter, but they are a finer thread. Oh, I didn't mention the wrench size you need is a 7 millimeter. Head size. Even with that, it's hard to get in there, but just work it, you'll get it. Alright, I got to shut this down. I can't do this one-handed. There was enough room to get a ratchet in there, so that worked out. Just looking at this thing, I guess that's the way it's supposed to be. It's not flat on the plate. Take a quick look from here. No, that's the way it is. Yep, that's the way it mounts. Okay, so time to put the front back on this thing. The long shot, if you remember, I took the rail out of here. I can't put the rail back on until I get the front, all the front panel back in. There's a bracket here. You're looking at this thing upside down, by the way. This would be it right side up as it would fold into the generator. So this is the top portion. This is in the bottom. And a couple things need to be connected while it's, loosely. We'll get it loosely in place. But one is the carburetor gas inlet. This is to the carb, and that goes to the fuel selector. And the output of the fuel selector, this hose goes to the tank. And the tank's not on there, so we're not going to hook that up until the tank's on there. Everything else, is as it should be. I disconnected nothing from here. This goes to the regulator. Don't forget to plug that back in to the battery charger. And that's it. Of course, I got this also has to be mounted elsewhere. This bracket needs to be mounted back on the side, but we'll do that when we get the other support column, or whatever you want to call this, the frame, back in place. Alright, I'm going to try to pull this into position. There is one screw that I took out when I disassembled this. I don't know if we need to put it in now or later, but it's the one that was a Torx head. And it went from inside the panel, if I can find it. Here it is. It was this Torx head. And it is inside the front panel. Comes through, and it comes through the front panel. It's this hole right here. And mounts to this bracket right here. That's all it holds this. Holds this to this bracket. That's it right there, and the rest of them are screws that attach to the frame. So there's, on this bracket, there's two mounting bolts, one here that goes to the frame here. Hopefully all this is in camera view. Through the side, this bracket right here. When this thing is flipped up, this bracket hole goes to this bolt here, and likewise there's one on the other side here too that will go to the frame once I put it back in place. So you got two mountings, one here, one here. This is hard to do when you don't have a tripod set up, but one here and one here on the frame that's not installed yet. So that's two mounting, 1 and 2, and then the third one is the Torx head that's hidden inside the panel that goes to this right here. All right, let me see if I can loosely reposition this up into the front here and go from there. Keep going back to this bracket, but there are some things that you need to look at before you put it back in to know how this is held in the inverter. I need a flashlight because all this stuff is black and it's hard to see on camera, but you see there, right there, this would be the top of the inverter unit as it sits in here. It sits on the bottom of the generator here, and the top would be somewhere in here, and it's held with this bracket. And you can see there's a little rubber mount there and a rubber mount there. Be careful, because these rubber mounts, they do come off. Okay, you can see I just pulled the edge of one of them off. and they go into these cavities here. Turn around here. There's one there and one there. There's two cavities in the bracket, 1 and 2. And that's what holds this inverter assembly in. There's no screws or anything mounting this thing. It just sits in the bottom here. And you can see there's 2 holes here in the bottom. Maybe you can if I'm one here and one here, and the 2 shock mounts on the bottom of the inverter unit. So there's no bolts or screws that hold this thing in. It simply sits in there, and this top bracket mounts to the 2 rubber shock mounts on the top, and it's just held in place by that. No bolts, just held in place by that bracket. Alright, so once again, let me see if I can roughly get this thing back in place. Okay, it takes a bit of finagling to get it in there, but one thing I should point out, and I forgot about it, number 1 is that ground wire I took off that was on the frame. And also, I don't know if I'm obscuring it with the flashlight or not, the frame has a little hook on the end of it right here. You can see it. Probably screwing it up with the flashlight here. And that helps you assemble this thing. Once you get it hooked on there, then you can leave it hooked on here. It'll pretty much stay in place until you get that flange screw back into the rail. And I forgot to measure that, but it's around 12 millimeter. I never took it out, so I'll measure it when I take it out of this one here. Well, it's already out, so. Okay, so we're getting there. Just got to put the fuel line on, put the carburetor, maybe put the carburetor back in, get this rail back in, get this back on, and tie everything down. Got some tie wraps and stuff down here that was, oh, that's where I took out some of those screws. Alright, so, okay, so it's time to get this rail back on. You can see how it goes. I marked it when I took it out, right front. I thought I was going to have to take that left out, and lucky I didn't, because that one's a real bitch to get out. In fact, I don't think it's possible to get out. So this is the only rail that you want to remove here. And it takes these 2 nuts, flange nuts, and a 13 millimeter socket. But this one on the rear, I'm not so sure you can get a socket on. I don't remember. But alright, can't do this one-handed, but you get the gist of it. Okay, so I got that in. It should be, you know, pretty much intuitively obvious that you got to make sure you get the battery leads in here, and the strap, you know, is positioned right, and that all the cable harness assembly, you know, is not in front of the frame behind here. And that's what we got. We'll tie all this up once we get this panel back on. Now there is another, really getting a little hard to see now, isn't it? Just like the other side with the yellow wire there, that we, just like the other side there, we put a bolt into the frame. Here the bracket, that bracket that holds the inverter on, also needs a bolt. If I can ever get the camera in a position to see it. Right down there, this harness is in the way, but right there, you can see the hook on the bracket. And trust me, there's a hole in the frame here for the bracket. It doesn't have any ground wire or anything, just a screw. or a flange bolt. And by the way, these flange bolts, I think I'm realizing that maybe they have a different thread. No, I guess not. No. They have the same thread as everything else. I thought maybe they had a finer thread to go into the aluminum here, but no, they don't. Alright, I'm going to shut it down. I'm going to get that connected up. And, geez, we're almost there. Still have to get the carburetor back together. Loose ends here. I don't want to forget this. Stepper motor for the carburetor. That's your, matter of fact, I'm going to connect that up right now because I will forget it if I don't. Won't run without this, or maybe it will, but it'll probably run terribly. Okay. That's that. I'll tie this up later. Oh, maybe it has a clip here already. No. This has a clip on it. You stick it in the hole, but it doesn't fit anywhere. Or maybe here. This is where it fits. This is the fuel line to the carburetor. Once this panel is put into place, there'll be enough room to stick that back in the hole. It goes right there. And I know everything is black on this thing, so I don't even know if that's going to record, but that's where it goes. Alright. Okay, that one was a little trickier, that one there, to the bracket. And in doing that, I just realized that my inclination was to put this, attach that Torx headed screw to the back of this and attach it to the bracket, but if I had mounted this, I wouldn't have been able to get this bolt back in. So this has to hang loose until you get that bolt in. This one right here. The one that attaches the long bracket to both rails. Otherwise, forget it. You'll never get your fingers in here to get that in there. Once this is pushed into position like that, you'll never get behind there. Okay, so I removed the front panel here so that we can install that Torx head screw. It goes right in here, that slot. And of course, I don't have the screw with me. There we go. And that attaches to the back of the bracket here. I'm probably going to have to put the camera down to do that. You don't need to see me screwing stuff in anyway, so. Alright, so that's next. And then I'll put the panel back on. Before I put the panel back on, there's two screws to go on down underneath here. And I don't know if you can see it. No, we can't see it without taking the panel off, and I'm not going to do that. So behind these two clips is, you know, the automotive body clips that just clip on. You know, they're just a clip that clips on. This is the condition of the screws that came out of there. These are those black screws. And this one doesn't look too bad, but this one here looks stripped. There's a lot of metal in there. This one's definitely stripped. And the reason it's stripped is because they used those clips there and somebody So anyway, I got interrupted. My wife walked into the garage here. But anyway, these are not threading into the body clips. And it is what it is. I'm just going to make sure I put the same screws back in there because I don't want to strip any more. Now that one tightened up. This one's in bad shape here, this one. We'll see if it's going to hold. Yeah, it held. Alright, well, I'm not going to worry about it now, so I'll just get this back on with the 6 screws, and this will be ready to go. This rubber floor for the battery, I know it's getting dark here now, filming here. There's a rubber floor for the battery. It's got these little, I'm going to pull one up. You see these little legs or tits, whatever you want to call them? They're meant to be pulled from the bottom to get this to snap in. And they probably did it at the factory before they put the axle on and everything else. So I don't know what access is available on the bottom, but I can't snap them back in. And I didn't pull them out. My friend pulled them out for whatever reason when he was dicking around in here. And so I'm blaming that on him. But I can't pull them tight now anyway, and I don't want to have to tilt this thing anyway. Worry about the oil. Alright, so anyway, if you're going to do it right, you would have to get onto the bottom with a pair of forceps like this, and then, you know, pull them through so that you can snap in the shoulder of that. See it? You're not going to be able to push it in from the top. By the way, good time before I button this thing up, good time to point out something here. Right here, see this 2-pin plug here? Right here, that plug goes to the fuel sensor, the multifunction fuel switch up here. You know, the knob's removed, but there's the fuel switch. This is to kill the engine when it's in the off position. Just keep that in mind. If you're ever troubleshooting a problem where you can't get it to start, you don't have any spark, anything like that, you can disconnect this, okay, this plug, along with the oil sensor on the side there, and then you've disconnected everything that could possibly shut the engine or keep the engine from, to prevent it from starting, that they intentionally put in here for safety reasons. So that's the kill switch. When you turn the fuel switch off to the off position, that kills the engine electrically. I'm going to start reassembling this carburetor. One thing I found out, you want to have the fuel selector in the off position. If you have it in run or start, the pin here, this pin, will make it very difficult to put it in this hole on top. You see the hole on the top of that arm? And you got to have the carburetor slid out almost, well, a little past the studs. Otherwise you won't be able to get the pin in there. You'll break it. If this carburetor is pushed all the way back, it's impossible to get that pin in there. So it has to be installed now while it's all flat. Get it in the hole. Have you heard that before? Get it in the hole and then push it all back together. And I can't do it with one hand here, but you get the idea. Did I just put that on right, or is it on backwards? Yeah, it was right. Alright, I can't do this with one hand, but the pin goes in a hole here, and then as one assembly you're going to slide it all back. I screwed up. Got to take it off. You got to put the gasket. Put the gasket on. I got two gaskets here. I don't know which one is which anymore. I think the thinner one went inside the inside the air cleaner. Does it go that way, or does it go this way? Well, it can only go one way, it looks like. This way. Yep. Alright, so anyway, make sure you have the almost screwed up again. Make sure that you don't cover this hole right here. Make sure the gasket is on so that the hole's not covered. Otherwise, things won't work. I don't know what that hole is, to tell you the truth. I know a lot about carburetors, but I have no idea what that hole is there for. But anyway, the second gasket goes over, actually goes on the back. It was stuck to the back of the air cleaner here, but it's a thinner gasket, and here I am putting it on upside down again. It goes like this. This is real thin, be careful with it. Okay, and then the air cleaner goes on like this, and obviously this hose attaches there. Can't do it one-handed. You got one flange nut in the back here, or a bolt. I'm sorry, it's not a nut. It's attached to a bracket back here. Screw that in by hand. Then you got two nuts that went on the studs of the carburetor to push all this back in there. They're also a 10 millimeter. You can get at them with a socket here. And your choke cable should look like that. And I think I mentioned this in the other video, but one guy was wondering why you had a piece of tubing going to nowhere, and this is a vent tubing. Vent. When you, right here on the carburetor, on the bowl, is a drain valve. You open this up and fuel will flow, and this is where it gets its air. This is a fuel drain for the tank. When you have this switch in either run or choke, you can drain the entire tank by opening this screw on the bowl, and the entire tank will drain. And this is, if you know anything about fluids, you need air behind the fuel that's flowing. Otherwise, it's like holding the top of a straw. The liquid only goes so far, and the suction in the straw from you closing it with your thumb, when you close it, the fuel will go so far, goes so far down, and then there's a vacuum holding it inside the tube. So anyway, you got to have a vent. Getting down to the last few things. That little cage inside the air cleaner, it only fits in one way, so you can't screw up, but the metal piece goes in first. I made sure that I made a note of that when I took it apart. So I just got to get the foam in. There's a hole in this foam. I don't know what that's for. I don't have a clue. Is there a hole in here? Oh, I see. It goes in, I see. It looks like it goes in to that where the hose goes. So this is the cover. The latch is at the top. The latch here is at the top. There's a notch on the foam rubber, and there's a notch inside here that you can't see. So this foam rubber goes in like this. Okay, and then hopefully this hole will line up, and should. This tube should line up with that hole. Forgive me again, you know, no tripod and one-handed. Alright, got to put the camera down. No way I'm going to do this one-handed. Minor stuff, but you do have to tie up these cables to make sure that they don't rub on anything. I saw one guy's video where this red lead here from the battery rubbed right through the top of this MOSFET on the electronic ignition, and it burned the ignition up on him. So you do have to make sure that it's all tied up, and I saved these tie wraps. You can release the tang and get them out of here. I saved them to put them back in there. And now that we're on some minor stuff here, one thing I don't want to forget is to put that screw back in the knob there. This right here, so we don't lose it. I don't like plastic knobs, I gotta tell you. A keyed plastic knob like this with all that, oh, I just lost the screw. You know, with needing all that torque to turn it, probably not going to last too long. I already see them on eBay and Amazon, so I'm sure that they're probably breaking. I got to put the camera down. Let me try one last time here. Can't get the screw in the hole here. Nope. Alright, I gotta put the camera. Okay, I got the battery back in. And I guess next gotta get the tank in. And then this canister, you know, courtesy of the greenies out there. Another something to drive the cost of everything up. You got a generator here that people probably use once in a blue moon, and California has to have you stick a canister on it. Morons. So I tried to put the tank on, and I purposely made a mistake here just to see if you guys were paying attention, but nobody yelled and screamed at me that, hey dummy, goes on the other side. Well, there you go. Now that ought to let me put the tank in. I don't know how that got there. I didn't even have the bolt in, so. Alright, one mistake out of many is not bad. Okay, that's more better. I haven't put the bolts in, but I'll put them in now for alignment purposes. And by the way, remember earlier I said I had a bunch of screws there, and I don't remember taking them all out. Well, this is where they go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 4 on the other side. That's 8 screws, and I have exactly 8 screws left. So, all right, I'm just going to put the mounts in, and then we can put the rails back in, the handrails, and pretty close now. We're getting pretty close. Okay, so I put these in. They're loose, just for alignment purposes. I'm not going to tighten everything down, or tighten these down anyway, until I get the screws in here and the rails back in. And the way these rails work, by the way, they slide in like that. And one has a flanged screw on this side, and The other side just has another flange screw, but no tang, if you see it. And these are the opposite of each other. This one has the tang and that one has the bolt, just exactly the opposite of this. So I'm going to slide that one back in wherever I got it. Right here. Through like that. And now I'm going to put the screws in. And for that I'll shut the camera down. And I'll put these flanged bolts in all four handles. And that will take care of the tank, except for these guys. Well, they attach to the side panels. So I just had to take these bolts loose again because I got to lift the tank. This is kinked, so I got to figure out. I know where it's supposed to go. It's supposed to go to this top canister, to the top hose. This one right here. But how it lays, I don't remember. I have to take it out again and dress it so that, you know, it's not kinked. Right now it's kinked at the bottom. I don't, you know, everything is black here. I don't know if you can see in there, but I don't even know where my flashlight is. There. See, it's kinked. So out it comes again. Who knew? Who knew putting a tank in would be this much of a pain in the ass? Whew. So I had to take the tank off again because I didn't have this hose routed right, and it was kinked on the bottom of the tank. It looks like a vent hose. Goes to the canister here. I think that's how they vent the tank. More pollution junk. But anyway, I got it all back together again. This hose goes up and around and behind. And I didn't put the clamp on. You really don't need clamps on this shit. I don't know why they put clamps on here. They put clamps on here, but they didn't put any clamp on here. So, alright. So, whew, man, about a half an hour went by screwing around with that. And it was a good thing anyway, because I came to find out that I didn't tighten the carburetor screws here. The 10 millimeter nuts here. I didn't tighten them down, so the whole thing would have been loose. See what I got yet to do. I got to put the screws in here, put the bolts back in the tank, screws in here. You can't see it, but I connected up the fuel line also. So the vent and the fuel line is connected to the bottom of the tank. If you need to know where that is, you can look at my other video where I take the thing apart. That's what I did to figure out where this went. Alright, so let me get that done. Well, I got it to the point where I could start it up. I got to even put some gas in it. Just wanted to make sure that I connected up all the hoses and everything. And you see that yellow terminal on the block there? Lucky I went around and checked. I left it loose. I left the ground loose, so who knows what would have happened. You know, if we tried to start it up, it probably would have ran, but electrically I don't know what would have happened. So I'm going to give it a try, and we'll see what happens here. Wish me luck. thing's supposed to read voltage, not to read the owner's manual. I wonder why it reads 0. The garage is closed, so I'm going to just shut this thing down now. Okay, I'm done. If you need to know how to take these things or put them back on or take them off, look at the first video. It's relatively easy, so I'm not going to shoot any more. This video is probably going to be pretty long, but it's filled with a lot of useful information for whoever wants to take one of these things apart and repair it. I did my best, so truck on.